Welcome to Crossroads, a show by the Epoch Times, America's largest independent newspaper and media. Now, as always, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps get our show out to more people. Now, look, a new political party could soon be forming in the United States. And guess who's behind it? Elon Musk. He's not getting along so well with Donald Trump right now. He wants to start his own party. Now, as the head of Tesla, the former head of the Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk has since turned kind of critical against some of the mainly spending policies of the Trump administration. And he has now declared his intent to start a brand new political party aiming at the moderate voters in the United States. This is him on X. He says, "Is it time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle?" And guess what? He did a poll and it got 80%, presumably in the middle, but we don't know, of people supporting the creation of a third party. Well, another third party. And only 19.6% are actually against the creation of a new third party. Now, based on that, Elon Musk made his common statement declaring the will of the people is the will of God. Vox Populi, Vox Dei, 80% voted for a new party. And in the past where he's said that, where he's done polls and then says Vox Populi, Vox Dei, he does it, suggesting that he's actually going to do it. Now, this could be big because remember, that seems to be the political trend we're seeing right now across the board. There is huge demand for a third party, a new political party. Newsweek said this, June 20th. Nearly half of Democratic voters say a third political party is necessary in the United States, according to a new poll. And they say the appetite for third parties always rises along with domestic tumult and sharp partisanship. Parties that are out of power have two natural reactions, one being an internal frustration with its own party leadership, and the second being a search for alternatives. Kevin Madden, a senior partner at Penta Group, told Newsweek in an email Friday. And notes that in a similar vein, Georgetown University professor Michael Kazin told Newsweek, quote, Democrats are now probably more in favor of a third party because they are unhappy with the current leaders of the party. Third parties never last long in national politics, but have been important in deciding elections in different times in the past. And notes Newsweek reached out to the Democratic National Committee for comment via email on Friday as well. That's where things are at. But with the Democrat Party in particular, and its Republicans too, there's a big divide taking place. Democrats, as I've been saying, they're really more than one party right now. There's the Democratic Socialists and the more, I call it progressive, whatever you like, wing of the party. And then there's your old school, classical liberal, more normal Democrats. These two parties are very different from each other. The voters are very different. They might have the same issues, but the solutions to the issues are radically different. And a lot of them are saying, you guys are too extreme for me. You've gone too far. I'm having trouble staying with this one, guys. And you could say the same thing with Republicans. There are a lot of old school Republicans, more like Reagan era, who don't necessarily like the Trump administration's policies. They might like what he does. They might not like how he does it sometimes. It's kind of the more common thing you hear. And so there is a large amount of voters who still probably vote with their party, but they might not fully agree with everything they're doing. And so there is a chance for this. Now, New York City has become an example of this kind of battleground we're seeing develop right now. A Democratic Socialist, some would say a communist, but Democratic Socialist, has won the Democrat primary. And so the competing candidates, what are they doing? Mayor Adams, former Governor Cuomo, what are they doing? They're still running. They're not dropping out. They're actually running independently. And this is interesting because normally if a Democrat wins the primary, the other Democrats get behind him. Why are these Democrats not getting behind him? And they're going to be running against him with different donors and everything. What is happening in New York could be something that happens elsewhere in the country. But look, support for a third party, it's not just among Democrats. This isn't just them saying that they want something new. Republicans also want a third party. This was October last year. And it shows the support has been changing quite a bit over time. Gallup said this last year. 58% of U.S. adults agree that a third major party is needed in the United States because the Republican and Democratic parties do such a poor job, quote unquote, of representing the American people, marking the 12th consecutive majority level reading in a Gallup's trend that stretches back more than 2 decades. While down 5 percentage points from last year's record high, it is still on par with the average 56% support level over the course of the trend since 2003, meaning it's been roughly at 50, 55, 56% for more than 2 decades, for a very long time now. Demand for a political party that is outside the two-party system has been very high. And I know we have third parties, but those ones have not captured the middle. And notes political independents are the most likely party subgroup to favor a third party, as they have been in the past, with 69% expressing support in Gallup's September 3 to 15, 2024 governance poll. And as Democrats' support has increased from 46% last year to 53% now, as of last year now, while Republican support has dropped from 58% to 48%, suggesting that they more so they do like Trump coming in, right? Although still huge demand technically for a third party. Now, I note the shift among Republicans come after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ended his independent presidential campaign and endorsed President Donald Trump. And notes also over the years, majorities of independents ranging from 56% to 78% have consistently backed a third party. In contrast, majority-level support from Democrats has been recorded only 5 out of 21 times Gallup has asked the question, with no more than 54% in favor. And notes for their part, majorities of Republicans have backed the concept of another political party on 6 occasions, with the broadest support, 63%, registered immediately after the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack, as they call it. Big deal, of course, because there are a lot of moderate voters who don't really say that they're necessarily Republican or Democrat. In fact, even some polling has suggested that MAGA voters are not necessarily Republican voters. And there are a lot of people who vote like that, too. In fact, it even shows up on the ballots where people might vote for Trump among Republicans, but they're not necessarily going to vote for every Republican. It's an interesting shift right now where, again, once Trump does leave office, we will see what happens at the Republican Party. But there's a big shakeup taking place across the board. It does seem that moderate Americans want representation. People in the middle want representation. Now, interestingly, a big part of the reason why Elon Musk is now pushing for a third party, it's because of his disagreements on high government spending. There's different takes on this. If you were to ask Donald Trump is saying it's because they're cutting the subsidies of like Tesla and electric cars and so on. Believe which side you want. But remember, Elon Musk was in charge of the Doge department, and his job was to try to identify and then help cut government spending. And imagine if you spent all this time trying to cut government spending and they get rid of the cap on government spending and want to spend money through the roof, which is now happening. Elon Musk has been very vocal about the large increases in government spending that are now going through with the big, beautiful bill, which is now officially passed the Senate. But because it's been amended, the amendments have to head back to the House of Representatives for yet another round of voting. And we'll see what happens with that. Epoch Times said the Senate passed its version of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act at midday on July 1st after a vote-a-rama that began the previous day and continued through the night because they made them read the entire thing. Now, notes that Vice President J.D. Vance broke a 50-50 tie to secure passage of the bill, and notes the passage is a significant political win for President Donald Trump, enacting provisions for critical elements of his second-term agenda, including increased border security, the extension of the 2017 tax cuts, rescinding so-called green energy tax credits, like electric cars, which will, of course, affect Tesla, and also no tax on tips or overtime. It's a lot more to it than that, but we're not going to be talking for 16 hours, so I'll keep you updated as that goes forward. But note this, With the package now heading to the House, Medicaid cuts are likely to be a primary concern for many Republicans from purple districts. Moderates like Representative Nicole Malliotakis, Republican from New York, and other Republican lawmakers, particularly from states like New York and California, were persuaded to advance the bill through the House in earlier votes. Anybody who's wondering about the cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, basically it's like this. They're creating an 80-hour work requirement if you want to get Medicaid and you're able-bodied. So if you've been getting Medicaid and you're capable of working, you might lose it unless you work 80 hours a week, or 80 hours a month, I'm sorry. So you got to work a part-time job. That is the requirement with it. Elderly people, people who are actually disabled, it will not affect you. And also, if you're an illegal immigrant, illegal immigrants are, for the most part, looking like they're going to lose health care. Some would argue they should not have gotten it in the first place. The way it's going to work, though, because from the federal level, they're not able to get health care. Elon Musk has been raising this, saying, why do you have to pass it? There's a loophole they've been taking advantage of. And basically what they're doing is there are some states in the United States at a state level give free health care to illegal immigrants. And what the Trump administration is going to do is if the states continue giving free health care to illegal immigrants, they're going to cut the amount of money they get from Medicare and Medicaid. That's how it's going to work. And so when you hear the narratives of they're going to cut it, that's the basis of it. On that point, the Senate made a few changes to it, which is why it's heading back to the House of Representatives. I'll go over more of what's actually in it when it passes. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking about possibilities here. But on a key point, this one turned out to be pretty divisive. It barely passed. Again, J.D. Vance was the tie-breaking vote on this. Democrats are saying this is going to weigh heavy on Republicans for the midterm. If you were to ask me, this will probably be the basis of a lot of their campaigns. You're probably going to hear the political campaigns being like, Republicans want to get rid of your health care. They want to get rid of Medicaid. They are willing to do this to you. That'll probably be the narrative. And normally I'd say the public has a short memory with controversies like this, depending on the long-term impact. I think this one actually is going to have a lasting impact. And the main reason, at least among Trump voters, is because of Elon Musk moving to create a third party. This is going to have a long-term, deep memory type impact. Core memory, you might call it. Now, like another topic, the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, she's made a shocking declaration about something agents are encountering in their efforts to deport illegal immigrants. I'll be talking more about this after a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the like button. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. This really helps our program grow. So let me know what you think. Now, look, we've heard before that dog bites man might not be much of a story, but a man biting a dog would be, right? That's the core of what makes something interesting. I would add something to that, though. What about if a man bites himself? This was actually recently raised in a press conference about what agents are encountering when they move to deport illegal immigrants. This is Homeland Security Secretary Noem during a roundtable discussion in Florida yesterday with President Donald Trump. Watch this.
The other day I was talking to some marshals that have been partnering with ICE. They said that they had detained a cannibal and put him on a plane to take him home. And while they had him in his seat, he started to eat himself. And they had to get him off and get him medical attention. These are the kind of deranged individuals that are on our streets in America that we're trying to target and get out of our country because they are so deranged they don't belong here. And they shouldn't be walking the streets with our children. And they shouldn't be.
Wonderful. Your new neighbor, your friendly cannibal neighbor, who is now being sent back to his true home. Now, Noem was building on the message from the Trump administration, basically saying, laying out the kind of people they're deporting. The allegations that other countries were emptying out their prisons and their mental institutions and sending us all their crazy criminals. That's the kind of message right now from the Trump administration, right? The message from his administration has been to highlight the worst of the worst. That's the narrative, right? The worst of the worst. We're deporting those ones. The gang members, the criminals, the cannibals, getting them out of the country. And if you look at the messaging from them, that's what they're showing, right? Now, it's messaging. They're not all cannibals, I would assume. And the messaging from the other side of the aisle has been showing the other side of that, right? People working at construction sites being deported. Your guy trying to work and make your food at a restaurant being deported. A mother being deported. They're showing different sides based on what they want you to see. On both sides, they're showing different sides of the picture, but without a doubt, there are some pretty shocking cases. There are some pretty crazy people they let in. Now, the Department of Homeland Security, they released some stats to give a clearer picture on the types of people who are currently being deported, laying out the fact that no, they're not all insane and criminals. But it turns out a lot of the ones they're deporting are actually more on that side. They say this: the media continues to peddle this false narrative that ICE is not targeting criminal illegal aliens. And they say this: the official data of this tells the true story. 70% of ICE arrests were criminal illegal aliens with convictions or pending charges. 70%. That's not all of them, but it's a lot. They say, additionally, many illegal aliens categorized as non-criminals are actually terrorists, human rights abusers, gang members, and more. They just don't have a rap sheet in the U.S. They say this deceptive, non-criminal categorization is devoid of reality and misleads the American public. Secretary Noem has unleashed the U.S. Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, ICE, to target the worst of the worst, right? That's the narrative, worst of the worst, including gang members, murderers, and rapists, and apparently cannibals. And they say we are putting the American people first by removing illegal aliens who pose a threat to our communities. As of June 30th, the Trump administration arrested more than 273,000 and deported more than 239,000 illegal aliens. Not on pace to reach the 20 million, they say, but on pace to maybe deport 4 million or something like that. We'll see what they get to, right? That's if they keep up the current pace. But look, back to the press conference they just had. The reason Donald Trump and DHS Secretary Noem were there sitting next to each other talking about cannibals being sent away, it was for the opening of Alligator Alcatraz, the facility that's now going to be used to help streamline departures, people leaving the country to wherever they may go. This is Donald Trump speaking about the facility and kind of what's being planned for it. Watch this.
It's a great honor to be deep in Florida, the Florida Everglades, to open America's newest migrant detention center. It's incredibly built, and you're seeing that yourself. That's why I said, let the press join us on our walk so they can see what's happening. It's known as Alligator Alcatraz, which is very appropriate because I looked outside and that's not a place I want to go hiking anytime soon. But very soon this facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet. We're surrounded by miles of treacherous swampland, and the only way out is really deportation. And a lot of these people are self-deporting back to their country where they came from. Quite a few. We're amazed at actually the number. We took the FEMA money that Joe Biden allocated to pay for the free luxury hotel rooms, where he's paying hundreds of millions of dollars in New York City, and we used it to build this project. And Your Honor, was just a little fraction of that money, the money they spent.
Now, ICE posted about what the facility is actually going to have, and they use this in a quick update. It noted the facility, it's going to have around 3,000 beds, which are going to be rotating, by the way. It's going to be used to house criminal aliens and only adult males with no history, it says, of behavioral issues. They're only holding each person there for up to 14 days, probably less than that. And the facility will also include, quote, proper meals, they say. Proper meals, not improper meals. Phone access, hygiene kits. It says law library access, presumably to help them understand their legal rights and lack thereof. And also medical and dental services, a recreation yard, and religious services. It notes the facility will also have to pass regulatory inspections, meaning this isn't some like black box or something like that. And it might not be the only facility of this type that we're going to see. They might build more like it. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis also had an interesting take on this. DeSantis is pushing other U.S. states to build similar facilities.
Don't let Florida be the only state. We've got very red states that should be doing this just as much as Florida's doing. That will increase their numbers. And then what happens is you'll have a lot of people that will deport on their own because they don't want to end up in an Alligator Alcatraz or some of those other places. So I think this is a model, but we need other states to step up.
So are other states going to step up? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. Some of them, I would say, probably not. Some of them, maybe. A big problem the Trump administration has been facing with deportations is actually, if you really break it down, why they're not going as fast as some people believe they should be. They're going pretty fast, depending on how you look at it. But their biggest bottleneck is actually space in the holding facilities. That's the element really slowing things down. They don't have enough beds. They have limited capacity. This is why they've opened up more beds in places like Guantanamo Bay to help facilitate deportations. And until recently, with Florida joining in now, Texas kind of led the way on this. Texas was one of the main states that had these large-scale facilities to hold, process, and then deport people. For the most part, people have been sent to Texas, then they're sent away. Now they're being sent to Florida and Texas, then being sent away. And maybe somewhere else in the works. Guantanamo Bay has also been used for the more problematic ones, we've been told, but we don't really know what's going on there. Now, with Florida now joining the effort, we're going to have to wait and see whether this trend spreads even further to other states because they are talking about it. We'll see what happens. In other news, though, 2 Chinese nationals were just arrested. Another big trend we're seeing. And they're being accused of spying on U.S. military bases and spying on American troops while also trying to recruit people to act as CCP spies. They're trying to recruit CCP agents around military bases and within our military. It's kind of concerning, right? Again, innocent until proven guilty, but they've been arrested. Fox News said this: 2 Chinese nationals face serious charges after they allegedly acted as agents of the People's Republic of China's government, the CCP, to collect intelligence about U.S. Navy service members and bases, while also recruiting other military members to carry out tasks for the country's CCP's main foreign intelligence service, the Ministry of State Security, the MSS. Now, it notes the Department of Justice said Chinese national Yuan Chen, who resides in Happy Valley, Oregon, and Liren Lai, who traveled to Houston on a tourist visa in April 2025, were arrested on Friday. And it's both individuals face charges of overseeing and carrying out various clandestine intelligence tasks in the United States on behalf of the Ministry of State Security, which I'll explain in a minute, along with assisting with the recruitment of potential MSS agents and gathering intel about service members and bases. It says the 2 men are accused of facilitating a dead drop payment of cash on behalf of the MSS. In other words, you leave something somewhere and then somebody knows to go there and pick it up. It's, if you don't want to hand somebody like a suitcase or an envelope of cash, you leave it somewhere and you coordinate the location. That's what they call a dead drop. It says the FBI arrested both men on Friday. Chen was arrested in Happy Valley while Lai was arrested in Houston with help from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel commented on this. He wrote on X, quote, 2 Chinese nationals were caught spying on our Navy and trying to recruit American service members for the CCP's intel service. He said, our FBI won't stand for it. We tracked them, we stopped them, and we're not done yet. Espionage on U.S. soil will be met with full force, he said. Now, personally, I'd say good on them for going after CCP spies. These ones were allegedly tied with the Ministry of State Security. The MSS, they're one of the more like official, kind of more conventional spy branches. Think of it as like the KGB, kind of. Those are the ones who were doing Operation Fox Hunt, where they were targeting Chinese, expats and dissidents on American soil, and were threatening them and their families, saying, hey, come back to China, face criminal charges, they'll probably execute them. And they said, if you don't, we're going to kill your family or maybe persecute your family in some ways. Those were the agents running that, Ministry of State Security. They were doing that in the United States, still doing it to some extent in the United States. But there's also a lot of other CCP programs like this and a lot of other CCP agencies. A big one, the Ministry of Public Security, slightly different. Those are the ones running the secret police stations. They're more like the secret police types. There's also a massive, massive network under the United Front Work Department, and that's also very active on U.S. soil. These are your agents trying to recruit people for influence operations, bribing government officials, buying people off, getting journalists acting as their puppets in major American news outlets, and manipulating these networks for various things, including disinformation campaigns, phony criminal charges, you name it. They're trying to puppeteer the U.S. government by infiltrating it. Huge, huge problem. I'd say one of the biggest threats to our country, in fact. That said, your questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. First off, Flying Squirrel. You're saying the Founding Fathers warned us about established political parties. It's actually slightly different than that. So when people say that George Washington would be turning in his grave, what they point to is George Washington's opposition of the democratic societies. Kind of forgotten history. If you read modern writings, they translate it as the Democratic Republican Societies. But that's a false it's a false revision of history. If you go back to the time of, again, the founding of the United States, there were organizations called the Democratic Societies. George Washington was super against them. The writings are a bit odd, if you want to read them, because they involve George Washington talking about subversion through the Masons and the Illuminati. I'm not joking. There are actual George Washington letters about this, and that was the basis of his opposition for the democratic societies. So what was the basis of all of this? I know it sounds crazy. This is George Washington, not me, okay? But there was an individual writing to George Washington, telling George Washington that there was an organization infiltrating the Mason lodges in Europe. And he said they were trying to get in there, and they had a plan to overthrow the kings of Europe and overthrow the religion of Europe, going against the Catholic Church. And he was warning George Washington that these groups might be active in the United States. In his letter, George Washington said, I'm aware of this. He says they are not active in I believe, the English Lodge, which is the Mason Lodge in the United States. It was mainly through the Grand Orient and the Scottish Rite, which were the ones operating in Europe, which were being infiltrated allegedly at that time. That was the belief, right? This was a huge part of American history. There was even an anti-Mason political party for a while. It was a weird time in America. In his writings, George Washington said that while these groups were not active in America, he believed they were operating under a different name. And the name of that organization, according to George Washington, was the Democratic Societies. And what those were this: America is a republic. We're a constitutional republic. We have what's called representative democracy. And there were individuals who did not want us to have a constitution. They also did not want us to have representative democracy. They wanted what's called direct democracy, where it's more like a Greek model of democracy. Washington regarded them as a threat to the Constitution and a threat to the United States. And he said the Democratic Societies were the ones trying to do this. George Washington also believed they were the organization behind the Whiskey Rebellion, which was why George Washington personally led the Continental Army to put down the Whiskey Rebellion. Weird history. A lot of people don't know this history, but that was actually the basis of people saying the Founding Fathers were against the creation of political parties. It was about that. On that point, there is the issue also of separating into factions. There have always been political factions, and that's never not been the case. It is human nature to organize ourselves into different ideological camps and then argue with each other about our beliefs. You find it just about everywhere. But I actually do believe in a system that helps support third parties. I know some countries do it differently than the United States does. I know, like, when I was in Taiwan watching, again, the last election they had, it was very interesting. They have a whole process set up to allow for a voice of third parties. There's a whole system there set up for it. Australia has kind of a tiered system like this. A lot of countries have systems where, because in America, what happens? You don't want to vote for a third party because you don't want to split the vote. And so what do? We vote for the party that is the best thing we can get. It might not actually represent what you believe in. It might not represent what you actually want, but it's the best you're going to get. And because of that, a lot of Americans, they'll vote for one side or the other, and they will not vote for a third party because they know that a third party vote is just basically voting to lose, because our election system is not really set up to support third parties. Now, on that point, I don't know if they're ever going to actually change that, but we'll see. We will see if they ever change that. I do think it'll be interesting if Elon Musk creates a third party because I do think there's demand for it. Case in point, look at RFK Jr. RFK Jr. was going to run under a third party. Donald Trump in 2016 was going to run as a third party candidate. Does anybody remember the Tea Party? The Tea Party actually represented a huge potential third party among Republicans. I would say DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, they're technically a third party. Many Democrats wish they would act more like a third party and not run in their primaries. But I do think there is a lot of demand for a third party. I do think you could see it because a lot of people vote for one of the two parties, but the two parties don't necessarily represent more perfectly what they would actually want. And the effect of that is, we're oftentimes represented by policies that not everybody fully agrees with, even if it's on their side of the aisle. And I think it'll be interesting. We'll see how they work it. Another question here. The 1MS. You're saying, my son is an electrical engineer in the automotive industry. His concern with all the factories coming back from Mexico and China is what's going to happen to American engineering. Will it remain here in the U.S. or will it end up in China or Mexico? Yeah, so that is one of the things that people are concerned about when it comes to the moving of factories. So America right now, one of the last finger we have holding on the ledge of losing our entire competitive edge in the world is that we still do most of the inventing and forward movement, and we're the engineers. We're the guys who come up with the designs, and then other people steal it from us, but we do it, right? Yeah, they steal it from us, but we thought of it, right? That's the American strength on the manufacturing front. We don't actually build it. And the effect of it is this. You have American companies that do research and development, that do the next big product and so on, and we manufacture those products in other countries. Now, many people point out that's not a long-term solution to anything, because what's going to happen when you disconnect the engineers from the production, eventually the people who are actually on the ground building things, have actually hold it in their hands and see how it works, they're the ones who see, how can I make this better? How could I improve this? And if you put your factories in other countries, eventually the people developing those products in other countries, they're going to be like, you know what, maybe I'll start my own company. Maybe I will found something. Maybe I'll create a new product and I'll compete with this guy because I can make this better. And over the course of time, what have you seen? You're seeing a lot of international competition based on American-designed products. That is the case. Whether by honest means or dishonest means, that is the case. Some would also say, though, that artificial intelligence could kind of undo the entire basis of copyright, because people are just making designs using artificial intelligence and they're registering the copyright on it. Actually, I want to do something probably deeper on that in the future. That's going to be a big issue, the influence of AI with inventing and so on. That being said, if America brings its factories back to the United States, we're not going to lose our engineers. If we keep them in other countries, eventually we probably will lose our engineers. And so by bringing the factories back, we will probably also regain the more forward movement when it comes to engineers and research and development and pushing forward on that. Interesting story too. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an engineer. My dad has done tons of different things, but he worked as an aerospace engineer for a while at a company called Teledyne Ryan. And interestingly, he didn't graduate from college, but they needed somebody who knew how to do fiberglass. And because he had a business before that making surfboards and catamarans, he knew how to do fiberglass really well, and so they hired him on that. And he ended up becoming a pretty good engineer, actually. He helped develop some of the original drones for the military, actually. So, interesting stuff, right? Special Nobody, you're saying, I see it as a change. I see it as change costs money. Hopefully that change spurs more manufacturing here and more money staying here and flowing here to, along with Doge cuts, start paying down the debt. Yeah, so when it comes to the big, beautiful bill, that's the argument. And some people agree with it and some people don't, right? We're going to spend our way out of debt. That's what they're doing. Is that going to work? I don't know. But I can tell you what they're doing with it, right? The argument from the Trump side is that we are on a long-term path to destruction, maybe a short-term path to destruction. And they're saying that when it comes to the tariffs, when it comes to the international trade wars, all of these things, all of this is dependent on the return of American manufacturing. That is what we need. If, again, people are saying that a tariff is a tax on foreign goods, it's a tax on products. Not if they build it in America. The problem you have with a lot of products is they don't build it in America. And so, we import too much. If you want to bring back American manufacturing, which is the goal, which is what will bring jobs here, which is what will keep the money flowing in our economy, which will stop money from flowing out and bleeding the country out, which is the way, outflow of money works. It's like you're bleeding. You're losing your blood, and you can only lose so much before your economy dies. They need manufacturing. So the argument for the Trump side is you need to kind of jumpstart it. But actually, there has not been a lot of talk about this. What they're doing is they're telling companies, if you move your factories back to the United States, you don't have to pay tariffs, and they will also find ways to write off or reimburse in some way the cost of moving their factories back here. And so they need money to do it. That's the argument. They need money to do it. They need money also for mass deportations. They need a lot of money for that because it costs $17,000 for every single person they deport. They believe that will also save money when it comes to the amount of money illegal immigrants cost the Medicare and Medicaid systems, the hospitals, the school systems, the everything. All the money we've been spending to take care of them. Law enforcement. Do you know the murder rate just hit the lowest ever on record for the United States? What changed that caused the murder rate to reach its lowest ever record? Maybe we've gotten rid of the murderers. That's a good concept, right? And so that's the basis of the thinking for it. The other criticism of that, the other side of the aisle, is you want to spend money to cut spending. I don't know about that, buddy. And so Elon Musk is a big critic of that. He's saying, look, the reason a debt ceiling exists is to have a ceiling on the amount of debt you can go into. If you want, because they're talking about getting rid of the debt ceiling. If you want to be able to go into debt as much as possible, you are not fixing the problem, you're making it worse. And the more debt we go into, the more interest we pay on debt. And the banks are making out like bandits. They love it because they collect all that interest. But the American people are suffering in the long term because debt is not just debt. Debt is money we have to pay every single year in interest. And you can only pay so much interest before basically your entire tax system is just going to interest rates. And the Fed's not changing its interest rates either. So that's the other side of the argument. I mean, I'm curious. Where do y'all stand on this? Let me know in the chat where you stand on this. I'm actually curious where you all stand. Special Nobody, you're saying, I see it as change costs. Oh, you read that one. Derek Davidson, you're saying, Josh, what's the beverage this morning? Good morning from Arkansas. The beverage this morning is coffee. I know a lot of you missed the days of me drinking tea. The reason I used to drink tea on camera is because I used to do the show at night, and I don't like drinking coffee at night. I usually switch away from coffee at about noon. Before noon, I drink coffee. And so if you're curious of my tea at home, I've been drinking green tea I got in Taiwan, one of my personal favorites at the moment. I'm a big fan of oolong tea also. So those are my big go-tos. And also on Arkansas, actually, I did a radio interview this morning. It's going to be airing next week on one of your radio stations. I've been actually doing a lot of outside interviews lately, if you've been seeing me or hearing me on the radio. I'm trying to do at least like 5 a week now, so you might be hearing or seeing me elsewhere when I'm doing those. Anthony Evelyn, you're saying, it seems Elon's proposed party is a libertarian party. I think Elon Musk actually is kind of a libertarian. I do think, though, the libertarians, if they change their policies a little bit, they could actually capture a lot more Democrats. I do think the Libertarian Party, the way they present themselves does not resonate very well with Democrats. But I would say a lot of Democrats are classical liberals. And if you go into classical liberalism, what's classical liberalism? Classical liberalism was Adam Smith. Classical liberalism was Frederick Bastiat. Classical liberalism was the anti-communists in the Frankfurt School, not the Frankfurt School, different, very different. And the School of Austrian Economics, very, very different from the Frankfurt School. Guys like Ludwig von Mises, Austrian economics, those are classical liberals. And so if you were to have a classical liberal party, you would get libertarians, you'd probably get more centrist Democrats, you probably get some of the confused youth who don't understand the nature of economics and leads them to align with socialism. I personally think a lot of them are not, they don't actually, if they understood communism well enough, they would not support socialism, which is why I do think a lot of them grow out of it. It's because, you know, what's the narrative, right? Oh, corporate greed. You know, Ludwig von Mises pointed out in his book, Planned Chaos, that a lot of the criticisms of capitalism are not criticisms of actual capitalism. The criticisms of capitalism and of, you know, Western states and free market economies, the criticisms are actually criticisms of state interventionism and the negative effects that state interventionism has had on capitalism. And so when you have kids complaining about corporate corruption and greed and you know, monopoly and all these things, what they're criticizing is cronyism. They're criticizing cronyism and the effects of state interventionism. And if you could have a political party that could communicate that well, you would probably pull a lot of those kids away from socialism because they would realize, oh, these guys don't actually represent what I actually believe. They're people who believe in, you know, dialect. They believe in the ideology of struggle and, you know, driving wedges between people. The basis of communism is dialectical materialism, not economics. They don't get rid of the factories, to tell you that. If anything, they'll make you a slave to the factories. So, you know, there's a lot of bad messaging. And also, I'd say even among conservatives, if you go to Middle America, what do people say? All right, you tell me. I know a lot of you are in, hey, Arkansas and other parts of the U.S. How many of you actually care, like, how your neighbor chooses to live their lives? Like, really, as long as they're not bothering you, how many of you actually care what other people do? I'd say most Americans are classical liberals. We believe in, you know, I do me, you do you. But if you start trying to force stuff on me, that's when I'm going to push back. You know what I mean? Most Americans, this is the basis of our cultural identity, right? It's classical liberalism. And, you know, unfortunately, both sides of the aisle, they have drifted away from that to an extent. But you know, again, we'll see what happens. If you could have a party that properly communicates a moderate classical liberal viewpoint, you would probably be the massively dominant party. You would probably be the biggest party in the country. Let's see here. Anthony Evelyn, you're saying, it seems Elon's proposed oh, sorry, I read that. Jen Reinbold, you're saying, is it true? Do you need money to make money? But whose money is it? You're saying it is true. It is and it isn't. I know people who've come up from nothing. I know quite a few people who came up from nothing. My dad's a great example of that, you know. I know people who, using myself as an example, I know people who, you know, basically got out of school, went into like the trades, earned money in the trades doing construction or something like that, earned enough money to start their own business and started a business. I know people who've started restaurants with really nothing. I have a very good friend, actually. He's a vegan. I don't agree with all of his life choices, but case in point, he's my friend. I don't agree with him politically, but he's my friend, right? Back to that point. But, you know, he actually has an interesting story. He started a food car, built that out, became very popular, started a restaurant, and he was written up in magazines and everything like that, actually did very well for himself. I know a lot of people who've come up from nothing. I also know a lot of people who came from everything and then went to nothing because they never learned hard work. They never learned how to take responsibility for themselves. They were used to having everything handed to them. They got money, they blew it all, they wasted it, and they never did anything with their lives. There are also those types of people. And I would say that also ties into the type of country we have. You can have a fantastic business, You can have a huge, well-working family business, and they hand it down through the generation. The father gives it to his son, but the son is not a hard worker, never pushed himself, had everything handed to him, and the business fails, and he ends up with nothing. You see? So you do have both sides of it. It's not to say that having money probably does make it easier to start something, but in the United States, it is true that if you push yourself hard, and you might have to work a lot, you can go from nothing to doing very well for yourself. I think you're talking about taxpayer money for the bill, though. It is true you need money to make money, right? So maybe I'm talking about the wrong thing here, but you're talking about the big, beautiful bill. On that side, that's also the argument, is that the country needs to... I think Trump is suggesting that we need to build back better, right? Trump wants to build back better, and so he needs money to do it. That's his argument. Well, we'll see what he does. Do you all remember when he was talking about building freedom cities? Because, like if you look at the other side, they're talking about these 15-minute cities. Trump had his own version of that called freedom cities. And we'd be living in like sci-fi, futuristic places of towering golden buildings with Trump written on the side. And you'd have your flying car. He actually was talking about flying cars and so on. That's the Trump version of the 15-minute city. But you got to build it first. You got to build it. Actually, I would say that maybe the first freedom city is Alligator Alcatraz. That's the first freedom city. Instituting freedom through a process, right? DC's bees, freeing them from the United States, right? DC's bees, you're saying you actually think that is true, Josh? That most new inventions have not been coming out of the U.S. for a decade. That is true. But I would also add to it, most other countries are not inventing things either. They're not doing, inventions in general have not been progressing very quickly. Unless you're talking about like weapons or you're talking about artificial intelligence or robotics. But if you talk about that front, America still is doing pretty well to lead the way. We haven't had some groundbreaking new tech in a while. I would imagine the phone in your pocket, other than maybe having a better camera, might not be significantly different from the phone you had 10 years ago. I'm probably an example of this. I don't really care too much about the latest generation of phones or computers or anything like that. Technological development has actually slowed down quite a bit. And maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. In some ways, I'd say we probably atrophied a bit. I think the internet is less interesting than it was 10 years ago. Because, if we've developed anything, it's state intervention. We've gone very far we've innovated state interventionism, where you no longer have proper free speech on the internet and things like that. That's where we've been putting all the force of innovation. Martin McKenzie, you're saying people don't support socialism/communism based on anything intellectual. They support it based on their desire to have something for nothing and the fiction of the rich paying for it. I would agree. Actually, I'd say the way that communists often do things is this. They bring up issues of legitimate concern. So, we paid too much in taxes. There are businesses, because I'd say of state interventionism and cronyism, that are causing problems. We have monopolies. People can't afford to, buy groceries. Some of them have trouble with it. People pay too much for rent. Now, look, if you ask Republicans or Democrats, people are like, yeah, I guess you're right. Some people pay way too much for rent. Communists do that. So they'll list out all of your concerns. They'll do that, right? In New York, that's the main line of the new candidate they have. They'll list out all the problems you're facing, and they'll exaggerate it a bit, right? Then what they'll do, and this is where they go off the deep end, they blame one group for it. So, For example, Mao Zedong said, all these problems in society, who's to blame? It's the landlords. Joseph Stalin, of course, well, maybe he's a bad example. Vladimir Lenin, who did he blame? Right, because Stalin was more like persecuting his own people, right? Vladimir Lenin, who did he blame? It's like you have all these problems. Who's to blame? It's the wealthy peasants, the kulaks. Pol Pot in the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. Who did he blame? It's the intellectuals. It's the intellectuals. Hitler, who did he say was to blame? Oh, it's the Jewish people, right? So he labeled them. Who do you have right now under the different movements in the United States? If you go by the feminist communist movement, it's men. Men are to blame for all the problems. It's toxic masculinity. If you go by the Black liberation movement, who do they blame? It's white people. They're to blame for everything. White colonialism. If you talk about the new narrative in being run by most communists, who are they blaming? It's the evil 1%, the big greedy corporations, the billionaires and the millionaires. It's those people who are to blame. They're the ones who are causing every single problem I've listed out. And then what do? Then they come up with a very kind of radical solution, oftentimes being, we're going to rob that group of people and we're going to give it to you. So Lenin, what did he do? Well, he robbed and killed the wealthy peasants, which led to famine, by the way. What did Pol Pot do? They went into the cities and they massacred people. They put them in the killing fields. They massacred them. They killed them. Then the country had a famine. China, what did they do? They killed all the landlords and they persecuted them. Then they had a famine. What did Hitler do? They made the concentration camps and they exterminated the Jewish people. And then they had a massive war that led to the destruction of their country. They keep doing that, right? And so what is the current, where are we at on that spectrum? They name all of the concerns you have. They blame a group of people as being solely responsible for all of your concerns. They say the solution to all of your concerns is robbing them and then giving you some of it, maybe not all of it. That goes to the people. That money goes to the people, not you as a person, but to the people, meaning me, the government, right? Or meaning me, the party leader. That's what they really mean, right? And then, of course, they murder or label or tear people down, and then they destroy the economy, right? So we're right there. We're right there right now. But that's also I think the deception in communism. It's why a lot of kids fall for it. Kids and the child-minded, I would say. The reason they fall for it is because it does oftentimes point to concerns in society. Look at the suffering of these people. Look at how people are having trouble. Look at how people struggle. Look at how people have to work multiple jobs. Look at how mothers have to take care of their kids and struggle and work jobs. Everybody has hardships, right? Everybody has troubles in life. Everybody deals with something difficult. Everyone. Every single person has something that is difficult for them. And if you want to just list out all those things, yeah, it's true. We all deal with something. The question is, what do you do about it, right? Some of that is normal, I'd say. In fact, if you look at G.K. Chesterton, he talked about the socialist narrative as the tyranny of the normal. Why do I have to work a full-time job? Well, geez, I'd rather be I'd rather be swimming or surfing or something like that. You know what I mean? Why does a mother have to take care of her children? Shouldn't the state take care of the children? Right? That's the narrative. It was that type of thing. So they identify the things you that are difficult for you, and they say we should get rid of these things. But what happens when you get rid of them? Well, you got to do something, right? Oftentimes you have social failure. You have parents who lose their children. You have families destroyed, broken up. You have poverty. You You have the effect that if there's no incentive to make money, people don't bother trying to make it, and so businesses fail. If there's no protection on you, if you build a business and innovate, why would you want to do it? If you're going to become a billionaire or a millionaire and they just steal all your money from you, why would you bother? The effect of those policies is people stop bothering. And the problem is you do have some people who are in fact nefarious. You do have the people who you're warned about, who are the predators, who want to victimize you. But when all of the other options are gone, what do? They go into the area where they can victimize people. And when you've created a totalitarian state, what do? They go into the totalitarian state. And that's when we end up with the KGB and the Stasi or the Chinese Communist Party and so on. That's when you end up with that type of thing. And so, yeah, I think it's true. People don't support socialism or communism when they understand what they actually do. But when people are only in the phase where they're listening to a guy saying, I understand all of your hardships. I understand how you struggle, how you have a hard time paying for things, how you feel downtrodden. When they're listening to that guy, it resonates with them. But when they start getting into the solutions, or the ultimate solutions in some cases, that's when things, that's when the real communist element comes in. And so people need to be a lot more discerning, I think. All right, everyone, that said, thank you so much for being here. Let me know what you think in the chat. When it comes to the big, beautiful bill, do you think that spending more money is the way to cut spending? Do you think we need to do it? Do you think that it's crazy? Do you think that you need the money to build back from... The reality is America's been in a rough place for a long time because we offshored most of our factories. Do you think we need money to bring that back and rebuild our country, and then maybe we can cut spending? Or do you think we're just going to get ourselves more in debt and more interest, paying more interest on debt? Let me know in the chat. I'm actually really curious where you all stand on this. That said, join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you have not yet, please like this video. Just click the button. It actually really helps us a lot in the algorithm. And if you want, share it as well. It helps us also. That said, folks, thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves. And as always, stay informed and stay free. Thank you.